إن المصدقين والمصدقات وأقرضوا الله قرضا حسنا يضاعف لهم ولهم أجر كريم.
بسم الله والحمد لله والثناء لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله. The Prophet ﷺ, after he conquered Mecca and he completed the conquest of Mecca, he with the Sahaba, he went to a battle known as the Battle of Hunayn. When he went to this Battle of Hunayn, the Prophet ﷺ, he would normally receive 20% of the ghanaim, 20% of the spoils of war. The Prophet ﷺ had a lot of wealth when you think about this, right? Because how many wars did he participate? How many battles did he participate in? And he would get 20% every time. The Prophet ﷺ, despite getting this 20%, he never ever took it for himself. He never ever took it for himself or his family. Rather, after the Battle of Hunayn, there was a lot of new Muslims who embraced Islam after the conquest of Mecca. So these new Muslims who just embraced Islam, the Prophet ﷺ, he wants to attract them to Islam. And after the Battle of Hunayn, there was a huge number of spoils of war, perhaps more than any other battle that happened prior to that. So what did the Prophet ﷺ do? He distributed these spoils of war to all the new Muslims, and he didn't give anything to the Ansār, those who were aiding the Prophet ﷺ and supporting him and were by his side all these years until he got to this stage. So the Ansār, they never quite understood why the Prophet ﷺ did that. And they had a meeting amongst themselves and discussing how the Prophet ﷺ, we're the ones who supported him, we aided him, he came to our city when he was exiled from Mecca and so on. But now when his people, Quraysh, become Muslim, he gives them all the wealth and he doesn't give us anything. So they sent their leader, Sa'ad ibn Ubadah radiallahu anhu, to the Prophet ﷺ. And Sa'ad came to the Prophet ﷺ and said to him, Ya Rasulullah, your people from the Ansār, they have felt some negative feelings about what has occurred. And the Prophet ﷺ said, why? What caused that? He said that they see you giving these people all this wealth and you've not given them anything. They felt, that you perhaps have sidelined them and you've neglected them. So the Prophet ﷺ, he said to Sa'ad ibn Ubadah, how do you feel about this, ya Sa'ad? And where do you stand? Now this is a question that Sa'ad, he can't answer directly because he can't be rude to the Prophet ﷺ. So he said, I'm a man that's amongst my people. Meaning I feel what they feel, I have the same opinions as them and so on. So the Prophet ﷺ said to him, I need you to gather the Ansār for me, an emergency meeting with the Ansār. The Ansār were gathered, and the Prophet ﷺ, when they were gathered, he looked at them and he looks at all of them and he remembers the love and the mercy and the compassion and the aid that they have given him. So he remembers all these memories, and the Prophet ﷺ, he says to them, is there anyone amongst you who's not from the Ansār? And they said, we're all from the Ansār, Ya Rasulullah. He repeated a second time because he wants to make sure that this meeting is only for them, exclusive for them and special to them. He repeats a second time, is there anyone amongst you who's not from the Ansār? They said, we're all from the Ansār, Ya Rasulullah. He repeated a third time, and this time a man got up and he said, Ya Rasulullah, they are my maternal uncles, my mother is from the Ansār. So the Prophet ﷺ told him, sit down, you are one of them as well. And then the Prophet ﷺ started to address them, and he's dragging the words out of his chest with so much emotion because of how much these people mean to him, the Ansār. He said to them, O Ansār, did I not come to you misguided, and Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala guided you through me? They said, of course, and to Allah and His Messenger belong all favors. He said to them, did I not come to you disunited, and Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala united you through me? They said, yes, and to Allah and His Messenger belong all favors. We are grateful for that, they said. He said, did I not come to you poor, and Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala enriched you through me? And they repeated the same answer. He said to them, did I not come to you weak, and Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala strengthened you through me? And they repeated the same answer. They're agreeing each time. Then the Prophet ﷺ, he said to them, what is it that I've heard about you that you have felt these negative feelings towards the Prophet ﷺ? Now normally when the Arabs, they will mention their favors, the favors that they've done for one, they would remain silent and they wait for that individual to respond and mention the favors that they have done for them. So the Prophet ﷺ went quiet. He's waiting for the Ansār to mention all the favors and all the good that they've done for the Prophet ﷺ. So they did not respond. Rather, they became very emotional. They started crying. And the Prophet ﷺ said to them, Ajibu ya Ansār, respond to Ansār. Nobody responded. Rather, their tears responded and their cries responded. And the Prophet ﷺ responded on their behalf. He said, if you wished, you could have said that you came to us exiled and we took you in. You came to us poor and Allah, we helped you. And Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala enriched you through us. And you came to us weak and Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala granted you strength through us. And you would have said all that and you'd be truthful and everyone would believe you. And then he said to them, O Ansār, did you feel negative feelings towards the Prophet ﷺ over lu'a'ati min ad-dunya, some worldly matters that are given to people to attract them to Islam, and I entrusted you with your iman because I know that you guys do not need this to make you steadfast upon Islam? He said, O Ansār, does it not make you happy that these people go back with their wealth and their camels and their sheep and their cows or whatever, and you take back with you the Messenger ﷺ to your city al-Madinah? For wallahi, what you take back is better. And he said, An-nasu dithar wal Ansāru shi'ar. He said that the people, all of the people are distant from me, but the Ansār are the closest to me. And then he made dua for them, that Allah has mercy upon them, that Allah forgives them. And the Prophet ﷺ solved that whole problem with that meeting. But there's a great lesson that we learn from this story, which is that the Prophet ﷺ, he demonstrated to us that these worldly matters that he gave to these new Muslims, that great amount of wealth that he gave to these new Muslims, the Prophet ﷺ did it on a regular basis, and he would regularly give it to all the companions. And that's why the Sahaba, the Ansār, they felt that why is it this time that we were excluded? And that's how much the Prophet ﷺ was giving, and that's how much he would help the cause of Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala and the religion of Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. To the extent that the Sahaba radiallahu anhum, they said that if the Prophet ﷺ, he was given a mountain of gold, the sun would not set that day except that the Prophet ﷺ has given it all out. That's how he was ﷺ. But this time the Prophet ﷺ was making clear that there was an objective behind why he was giving it to these new companions, these new Muslims, to attract them to Islam. And he's showing us another form of charity, مُؤَلَّفَةُ قُلُوبُهُمْ, to attract people's heart to Islam, to make them firm and steadfast and so on, to help them out when they're newly practicing, when they're new Muslims and so on. And this is another understanding that the Prophet ﷺ taught the Sahaba radiallahu anhum another form of charity that the pioneer of charity work has taught us alayhi salatu wasalam. And he also taught us that you must be concerned about the feelings of others, that you do not let the worldly matters get in between you, and that you must solve the problem instantly, immediately. Emergency meeting that he did with Ansār because of how important these people are. Again, making sure that no worldly matters get in between the Muslims. We ask Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala to make us those who follow the example of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam in these great matters. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
فأما من أعطى واتقى وصدق بالحسنى فسنيسره لليسرى وأما من بخل واستغنى وكذب بالحسنى فسنيسره للعسرى